Welcome to Midlife Clarity with Dr. Tracy Page, a podcast for women over 40, navigating hormones, metabolism, strength, and confidence in midlife. Midlife is the moment you start asking bigger questions and expecting better answers. This is where we stop minimizing symptoms, dismissing perimenopause and menopause changes, second-guessing ourselves, and accepting this is just how it is. Instead, we get informed. We get curious. We get clear. Because midlife isn't about hot flashes or hormone shifts. It's about energy, strength, metabolism, relationships, identity, purpose, healthy aging. On this podcast, Dr. Tracy Page blends evidence-based medical insight with honest conversations to help you understand what's happening in your body, support your hormones, strengthen your metabolism, and build lasting confidence in this next chapter. You deserve clarity about your health, and clarity changes everything. Here's Dr. Tracy Page.
Anxiety, heart palpitations, constipation so severe she was having 1, maybe 2 bowel movements a week, heavy periods, recurrent vaginal infections, exhaustion despite getting sleep, and weight that wouldn't budge no matter what she tried. If you've heard that list of symptoms and thought she needs to see 5 different specialists, you're not wrong. That's exactly what most medical systems would do. A cardiologist for the heart palpitations, a gastroenterologist for constipation, a gynecologist for the periods and the vaginal infections, and a psychiatrist for the anxiety. But here's the problem with that approach. It treats every symptom as if it grew from a different seed. And in this case, and in so many cases I see at the clinic, they all grew from the same root, one driver, one place that likely hasn't been looked at. And in this case, it was the gut. Today, we're going to talk and walk through a real patient case, a 42-year-old woman who came in looking like a mystery. And I'm going to show you exactly how the gut, the immune system, and the adrenal glands, as well as our hormones, are not 4 separate stories. They are one story told across 4 systems. And once you understand how to read it, you will never, ever look at your own symptoms the same way again. Well, at least that's my hope. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Page. I'm a functional medicine physician, and this is Midlife Clarity. I run a very busy functional medicine practice in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I'm so glad you're here because I love helping women have vitality and feel amazing. So this podcast is called Your Gut is Running the Show. Why your anxiety, your hormones, and your weight are all downstream of one thing nobody has checked. Okay, I'm going to call my patient Jenna. She's 42 years old. She came to us with what felt like on the surface a scattered collection of complaints. They had been getting worse progressively over the past year. Anxiety that ramped up significantly, heart palpitations that were alarming, and lightheadedness. And then on the physical side, she had constipation so severe that she was having just 1 or 2 bowel movements per week. She had heavy menstrual cycles, recurrent vaginal infections that kept coming back no matter what she tried. She wasn't sleeping enough. She had about 5 to 6 hours on a good night. Her diet was poor. She was leaning on caffeine and alcohol to manage stress and to wind down. No strength training, low fiber diet, high stress with no structured way to manage it. She looked like, I would say, a lot of my overworked women that I see in the practice, holding everything together on the outside, which women are so good at doing, while her biology was quietly unraveling on the inside. But then the labs came back, and that's where the story really begins. Okay, so here's the workup that we did and what it revealed about Jenna. She had a C-reactive protein, so short for CRP or CRP. It was 4.4, which is high. Optimal is below 1.0. So she had active systemic inflammation, which was confirmed with her CRP. Her iron panel, the critical pattern, showed a ferritin of 240. It's high, but it wasn't iron overload. This is inflammatory iron trapping. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. She had a total iron binding capacity, TIBC, of 226, which is low, which confirms the body is not iron deficient. It is sequestering iron due to inflammation. So her metabolic fasting insulin was 20.3, significantly high for a 42-year-old, and optimal is below 6. Major insulin resistance was already present. Her LDL cholesterol was 107, elevated, of course, and early cardiometabolic dysfunction. So what else did we notice on her labs? Her HDL cholesterol was 43, low optimal. She should be above 60 for cardioprotective cholesterol sufficiency. And her hormones, her adrenal androgen excess pattern, she had high DHEA. She had adrenal gland that was overproducing androgens in response to her chronic stress. Her testosterone was 54, which in our labs was high for a female, and she had androgen excess driving her symptoms. And remember, there are optimal levels. And then also, when we look at labs, each lab has a range. And so depending on how the lab processed the supplement, their range could be different. So LabCorp could have a different range than Access, and Access could have a different range than Quest. So take these numbers, and here, normal, low, and high, not optimal, but don't plug in your number into somebody else's lab values because it might be a different lab that resulted it. Okay, micronutrients. Her vitamin D was 15. Severely low, so critically low. Optimal for immune and hormone function, again, is 60 at the minimum, and 80 is where we like to keep our patients. Folate was 3.4, which is low, which impairs methylation. It affects mood and hormone detoxification. And her zinc was 53, which is also low, insufficient for immune defense, gut integrity, and hormone production. Her thyroid TSH was normal, but again, remember that's one of all the tires on the car. So it does not mean her thyroid is fine. Her free T4 was 0.93, which was borderline low and inadequate thyroid hormone production. And her reverse T3 was elevated. Her body was converting thyroid hormone into inactive blocking form due to chronic stress. So remember, I told you there's active free T3, which produces great thyroid function and gets all the benefits of the thyroid. And then there's reverse T3, and when it's elevated, it blocks active T3. It sits on the receptor, but does nothing. Okay, now, I want you to sit with this for a moment. On the surface, this looks like a woman who has a dozen separate problems. But every single one of these numbers, the CRP, the ferritin pattern, the insulin, the androgens, and the depleted nutrients, as well as the thyroid suppression, it's all pointing to the same upstream driver. And that driver is inflammatory gut dysfunction. So let me show you how I know that. I want to take you on a systems tour of Jenna's body because this is where functional medicine is different. It's different from conventional medicine. We don't ask what symptoms does she have. We ask what is a single dysfunction creating all of the symptoms. And sometimes it's just one thing. Sometimes it's two things, but there's always a driver. So let's start at the root. Root cause number 1, gut dysbiosis and impaired motility. That's the broken filtration system. So I like to use analogies. So think of your gut as a city's wastewater treatment plant. Okay? So your gut is a city's wastewater treatment plant. Its job is to process everything coming in: food, hormones, toxins, medications. It neutralizes what's harmful, it absorbs what's useful, and it eliminates the rest efficiently. When the plant is running well, the city is clean. When the plant breaks down, waste backs up, toxins leak into the water supply, and the entire city starts showing signs of contamination. And that's Jenna's gut. So her whole body is showing signs of contamination because her system isn't working. Her gut has broken down. 1 or 2 bowel movements per week is not a minor inconvenience. It's actually pretty clinically significant. When stool sits in the colon for days, the gut microbiome shifts dramatically. Bacteria that thrive in stagnant, low-oxygen environments, many of which are inflammatory, begin to dominate. So think about it. There are some bacteria that thrive in a stagnant, low-oxygen environment, and they're mostly inflammatory bacteria. Beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, support the gut lining, regulate our immune function, and metabolize hormones are then crowded out. And here's what most people don't know. Estrogen has already been processed by the liver. It gets sent to the gut for final elimination. In a healthy gut, it exits the body. In a dysbiotic gut with impaired motility, an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, produced by the wrong bacteria, reactivates that estrogen and sends it right back into circulation. This is one of the primary mechanisms of estrogen dominance in women, and it lives entirely in the gut. Jenna's recurrent vaginal infections are another gut fingerprint. The vaginal microbiome and the gut microbiome speak to each other through what we call a shared immune system or shared immune signals. When the gut microbiome is disrupted, vaginal dysbiosis follows, independently of hygiene, independently of sexual activity, independently of anything the gynecologist would check first. So here's some interesting statistics. 1 in 7 women in the U.S. reports fewer than 3 bowel movements per week. But clinical symptoms begin when motility drops below daily. So all you have to do is have one missed during the week. You only have 6 out of 7. And you're already going to start with some problems. And you're not alone, because remember, 1 in 7 women report fewer than 3 bowel movements a week. Gut transient time longer than 72 hours is associated with measurably higher estrogen recirculation via beta-glucuronidase activity. Women with gut dysbiosis have 3 to 4 times higher rate of recurrent vaginal infections compared to women with a balanced gut microbiome. Severe constipation is associated with significantly elevated CRP. Gut stasis in itself drives systemic inflammation. So if your gut's not moving, you're already going to have inflammation just from that. The gut microbiome produces or regulates over 95% of the body's serotonin, which directly influences anxiety, mood, and gut motility. So now you're understanding why her anxiety is related to her gut. Constipation is not a digestive problem. It's an inflammation problem, a hormone problem, a mood problem, and it's occurring all at once. Okay, what's the root cause number 2 to her symptoms? The ferritin trap. When high doesn't mean what you think. So this is really important. So this is the finding I want every woman listening to this podcast to write down, because this is the finding that if it's missed or misread, it could have caused real harm. Jenna's ferritin was 240. If you've had your ferritin checked, you might know that a high ferritin is sometimes associated with iron overload or a condition called hemochromatosis. Now, we want your ferritin to be above 90 because it's a representation of good iron stores. So you have hair growth, you don't have cold intolerance, your thyroid will function, your brain will function, so you need iron. But a ferritin of 240 is too high, and initially it might be interpreted as iron overload or, like I said, the genetic condition hemochromatosis, where you have an inability to process your iron. So at first glance, that would seem concerning. But here's the critical clinical detail. Her total iron binding capacity was low, and that combination changes everything. Ferritin, so again, another analogy, because her total iron binding capacity is low, she doesn't have the capacity to bind iron, okay? So she doesn't have an iron problem. Ferritin is like a storage locker for iron. High ferritin can mean one of 2 things. The locker is overstuffed with iron, or the locker has been locked shut by the building security system, let's say, because there's a fire in the building. The iron isn't overflowing, it's being locked away on purpose. The body does this during inflammation as a defense mechanism because bacteria and cancer cells thrive on circulating iron. So, if you have a lot of circulating iron and there's a problem, you're going to lock everything down. And that's when ferritin goes high, it's locked down. So because bacteria and cancer cells thrive on circulating iron, when the body senses a threat, it hides the iron. It's called inflammatory iron sequestration or anemia of inflammation. You may have heard those terms. Okay, so I want to go through that one more time because it's super important. Ferritin is like a storage locker for iron. High ferritin can mean one of 2 things. 1, the locker is overstuffed with iron, or the locker has been locked shut by the building security system because there's a fire in the building, and that fire is inflammation. The iron isn't overflowing. It's being locked away on purpose. The body does this during inflammation as a defense mechanism. because bacteria and cancer cells thrive on circulating iron. When the body senses a threat, it hides the iron. It's called inflammatory iron sequestration or anemia of inflammation. Okay, so Jenna's body is hiding its iron, not storing excess iron. The CRP of 4.4 confirms the fire is burning. The low total iron binding capacity confirms that iron transport system is not functioning normally. If a physician had seen the high ferritin and given her iron supplementation, which is a completely reasonable sounding response, it would have fed the inflammation. It could have worsened her gut dysbiosis, and we don't want that. So it's so important that you understand your own lab numbers. So it would have caused accelerated bacterial overgrowth, and it might have even made every single one of her symptoms that we have been talking about even worse. So the treatment here is not iron. The treatment is putting out the fire. Reduce the inflammation, heal the gut, and watch the ferritin normalize on its own. Okay, so here are some statistics. Ferritin is an acute phase reactant. It rises with any inflammation independent of actual iron stores. A CRP above 3 with high ferritin and low total iron binding capacity is a textbook pattern for anemia of inflammation, not iron deficiency or overload. I see this, I can't tell you, so many times in the clinic, so many high ferritins. Approximately 30% of women with elevated ferritin and symptoms of fatigue actually have inflammatory iron sequestration, not iron excess. And giving iron supplements to a woman with anemia of inflammation can worsen gut dysbiosis, increase oxidative stress, and accelerate bacterial overgrowth. And remember, bad bacteria grow in that environment. Normalizing CRP, C-reactive protein, which is our inflammatory marker, through an anti-inflammatory interventions. It can reliably reduce ferritin and restore normal iron metabolism without iron supplementation. High ferritin does not always mean iron overload. Sometimes it means the body has locked its iron in the vault because something is on fire. Okay, root cause number 3, the stress adrenal hormone cascade. So in Jenna's case, her DHEA, was high, and we do the sensitive one, was high, and her testosterone was elevated at 54. So in this pattern, adrenal androgen excess is almost never a primary hormone problem. It is a stress problem, and it's a stress response. And in Jenna's case, it's being driven by the intersection of her gut inflammation, poor sleep, and her HPA axis dysregulation from stress. So let me explain it this way. Think of the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, as the orchestra conductor of your entire endocrine system. When the conductor is calm, every instrument plays in harmony. Estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, cortisol, insulin, they're all in rhythm. But when the conductor is panicky, overwhelmed by inflammatory signals from the gut, the conductor is sleep deprived and has chronic stress, the orchestra falls apart. Some instruments get too loud, some go quiet, and the music the body makes becomes very chaotic. So in Jenna's case, the adrenal glands under chronic stress are overproducing DHEA, and this converts to testosterone. That excess testosterone is contributing to her anxiety. Androgens are very excitatory to the nervous system, worsening her insulin resistance and likely contributing to the severity of her menstrual symptoms. And then there's the thyroid. Jenna's TSH was normal, but her free T4 was borderline low, and her reverse T3 was elevated. So this is the same pattern we see in chronically stressed patients. The body's diverting thyroid hormone away from its active form, that is T3, and into a more metabolic, what I call brake pedal. This is not thyroid disease. It's the body deliberately slowing metabolism in response to perceived chronic threats. So you fix the stress, heal the gut, the thyroid will follow, and you know it, weight loss will happen. So some statistics. Chronic HPA axis activation elevates DHEA in up to 70% of women with chronic inflammatory conditions. Elevated androgens in women are associated with increased anxiety severity. Testosterone and DHEA directly activate stress neural circuits. High insulin is a major clinical concern. Insulin resistance predicts 4 to 5 times higher lifetime risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. You should know you're fasting insulin. Gut inflammation directly activates the HPA axis via the gut-brain axis. It creates a self-reinforcing loop. Gut inflammation, cortisol, and more gut inflammation. Sleep below 6 hours per night increases insulin resistance by 20 to 30%, elevates your DHEA production, and doubles the rate of gut microbiome disruption. So I tell my patients all the time, sleep and stress affect your gut. It is so true. And then vitamin D at 15 is associated with 2 to 3 times higher rate of autoimmune activity, significantly worsening insulin resistance and impaired immune surveillance of the gut. Her anxiety wasn't in her head. Her gut was on fire, her adrenals were in overdrive, and her entire endocrine orchestra had lost, you know it, her conductor. So if the conductor isn't around, it isn't calm, and it isn't conducting, all the hormones are off. And remember, that's estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, cortisol, and insulin. Okay, why is this pattern more common in women over 40? Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, this isn't me, this doesn't apply to me. But everything in this story applies to all of us, many of us. Gut dysfunction driving systemic inflammation, driving hormone chaos, driving metabolic dysfunction doesn't disappear no matter what age you are. It amplifies, and for women in perimenopause and menopause, declining estrogen acts as an accelerant on every single one of these mechanisms. Okay, how does perimenopause make these symptoms or problem worse? Estrogen is powerfully anti-inflammatory. It supports the integrity of the gut lining. The tight junctions that prevent contents of the gut from leaking into the bloodstream. So think about it. Estrogen is anti-inflammatory. It supports the integrity of the gut lining, and it supports those tight junctions that prevent things leaking out of the gut and into the bloodstream. As estrogen declines, gut permeability increases. Studies show that postmenopausal women have measurably higher gut permeability than perimenopausal women of similar age. Okay? And health status and diet. So they could be similar age, similar health status, similar diet, but if they are postmenopausal or menopausal, they have a measurably higher gut permeability than even younger women premenopausal. That increased permeability accelerates the inflammatory cascade. So more inflammation means, more cortisol. More cortisol means more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance means more androgen production. I think I talked about this in PCOS. More androgens mean worsening mood, energy, and metabolic function. And round it goes. Okay, so I want to repeat that one more time. The increased permeability accelerates inflammatory cascade. So if you have stress, if you're not sleeping, you could have gut permeability. If you have gut permeability, you have more inflammation, which means you have more cortisol production, which means you have more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance means more androgen production. Think of DHEA and testosterone. And more androgens mean worsening mood, energy, metabolic function. And all of those other things cause weight gain or weight-resistant loss. So they affect everything. If you have experienced a significant worsening of anxiety, digestive issues, weight resistance, or hormonal symptoms in the years surrounding perimenopause to menopause, this is probably why. Your gut became more vulnerable precisely when estrogen left the building. So here's some statistics. Postmenopausal, I should say menopausal women, because really you go in menopause after you're having 1 year of no menses, and then that menopause is 10 years, and then after that they call you postmenopausal. So women have measurable higher intestinal permeability than perimenopausal women of similar health status. The gut microbiome diversity declines significantly in perimenopause and continues to decline through menopause, correlating with worsening insulin resistance, weight gain, and mood disruption. So that might send a little light bulb moment for you, because just your gut microbiome diversity with age, because it significantly changes in perimenopause, continues to decline through menopause, correlating with worsening insulin resistance, and bingo, weight gain and mood disruption. So this is why my mood is horrible. I'm gaining weight. I don't even know who I am. And all I did was go from perimenopause to menopause. Estrogen receptors are found throughout the gut. epithelial cells, the immune cells, and the smooth muscle. Loss of estrogen significantly directly impairs gut motility and barrier function. And I hear this all the time. Women will say, I'm constipated. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm constipated. Women with poor gut health at menopause report significantly more severe vasomotor symptoms, so think of hot flashes, night sweats, than women with diverse, healthy microbiomes. And the gut microbiome metabolizes and recirculates up to 40% of the body's estrogen pool. A disrupted gut in perimenopause worsens estrogen deficiency symptoms beyond what the ovarian decline alone would predict. So if you don't have a healthy gut and you're going into menopause, your hot flashes and night sweats are going to be worse. You're going to gain more weight and your mood is going to be horrible. When estrogen leaves, the gut becomes more vulnerable. And when the gut becomes more vulnerable, every hormonal symptom of menopause gets louder and gets worse. Okay, how do we treat her? Here's our priority roadmap. This is where I want you to be very clear about something. In cases like Jenna, and in cases for women over 40 listening, the sequence of treatment is as important as the treatment itself. And I just said this on my last podcast. Treating hormones before fixing the gut won't work. And this is the hardest conversation I have with women because they come in and we're so used to, fix the symptom, deliver Amazon the next day. Like we're so used to quick results. And so women don't want to wait. And it's so hard for me to help them understand that we have to fix the gut first because no matter what we do, it won't work if we don't fix the system. Treating anxiety before reducing inflammation won't hold. And you have to go upstream first to get long-term resolution of symptoms. Fix the gut and the motility. It should be a non-negotiable first step. Until Jenna is having at least one full bowel movement every single day, everything else we do will have limited impact. The gut is the source. It has to be addressed first. So motility activator, we want to continue and optimize. The gut needs to move before it can heal. Magnesium citrate, 400 to 600 milligrams at night, both supports bowel motility and reduces cortisol stress. It can work on both simultaneously. 2 problems, 1 intervention. Some patients like magnesium glycinate, but I think citrate looks a little bit better when they're supporting gut motility. Fiber increase, target 30 to 35 grams per day from whole food sources. Feed the beneficial bacteria that calm inflammation. I can't say that enough. It is so important to feed the bacteria that calm inflammation. We have such an opportunity to change our gut microbiome, and this is one simple way we can do it. If I can't get patients better just by doing what I call modifiable lifestyle changes, so things they can change, then I'll do a GI map with zonulin test. And sometimes I just encourage them to have it done because it actually gives me the roadmap of fixing their gut. We cannot treat the gut specifically until we know what we're dealing with. Because sometimes it's dysbiosis, sometimes it's SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, sometimes it's a pathogen, and also too it can be permeability or a combination of all those and more. So remove processed foods and alcohol. They both directly worsen gut permeability and microbiome diversity within 24 to 48 hours after consumption. So here she is. She's paying to come see me. We have to fix her gut, and she's eating processed foods and drinking alcohol. And these are hard, modifiable lifestyle changes that she has to make because it doesn't matter how many things I give her if those 2 things are affecting her gut microbiome diversity within 24 to 48 hours of consumption, then we're constantly going to be chasing our tail. Okay, the GI map piece is critical. A prebiotic or probiotic chosen without knowing the gut's actual microbiome, the landscape, is like prescribing antibiotics without knowing which bacteria you're treating. So I also try to help them understand how important it is for me to know your specific gut microbiome. And that's what the test tells us. We need the map before we can draw the route. So it's so important to have this information. And I understand these functional medicine tests are not inexpensive. They can be expensive to somebody, but you're going to spend a lot more money down the road taking supplements and trying different things and also maybe health diminishing if we don't solve for the problem. And so the GI map is such a golden test to help us figure out your gut microbiome so that we can specifically treat you. Okay, priority number 2, reduce systemic inflammation, put out the fire. Her CRP is 4.4. It tells us fire is active. Bringing it down is the second domino that we need to do. It will also begin to normalize the ferritin, support insulin sensitivity, and reduce the adrenal androgen output that is driving her testosterone elevation. So what do I give her? Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, and DHA, 2 to 4 grams daily, directly suppress inflammatory cytokines, reduce CRP, and protect the gut barrier lining. And the gut integrity is so important. And you'll hear me talk about omega-3 fatty acids on podcast after podcast. Curcumin, 500 to 1,000 milligrams twice daily, one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatories shown in clinical trials to reduce CRP and improve gut permeability. Dietary fiber, 30 to 35 grams daily. And we know butyrate production from fiber fermentation is the primary fuel source for colon cells. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory. I love butyrate. Butyrate is great for the gut. It's great for the brain. So if you don't get 30 to 35 grams of dietary fiber, you can take tributrin, you can take sodium magbutyrate, you can take calcium magbutyrate. There's so many good sources out there. And when you hear the sodium or the calcium mag in front of butyrate, those are just buffers. So they're not there for replacement. They're just there to buffer butyric acid. Okay. Alcohol elimination. Even moderate alcohol, 2 to 3 drinks per week, measurably increases her gut permeability and CRP in women with pre-existing dysbiosis. So that's really important. So she has pre-existing dysbiosis. Her gut is already in shambles. So adding alcohol is not helping her. But if you're a healthy individual with a healthy gut, that doesn't mean you can't have a cocktail every now and then. So make sure you understand that distinction. Okay. Address insulin resistance and break the metabolic lock. That's really priority number 3. Fasting insulin of a 20.3 is a serious finding. Because it's not borderline, right? It's high. This is early metabolic syndrome territory. But the good news is insulin resistance at this stage is highly reversible, and a targeted lifestyle and nutraceutical intervention will help. So what would I give my patients? If they want to use supplements, I'd give them berberine, 500 milligrams, 2 to 3 times daily with meals. So if they're only eating 2 large meals a day, I say take it with those, but I try to get them to get up to 3 times a day. Clinical data shows effectiveness comparable to the drug metformin for insulin resistance, also has direct gut microbiome improving effects. So you get 2 for 1. Protein first meals, 30 grams of protein in each meal. It blunts the insulin spike, preserves muscle mass, and reduces hunger-driving hormones. The third thing we know statistically is post-meal walks, 10 to 15 minutes, have shown to reduce postprandial glucose by 20 to 30% and insulin demand proportionally. And then resistance training 3 to 4 times a week. Now, I'm a big fan of telling my patients that if you're still not sleeping, I don't want you to try to do resistance training. You really have to, have a full cup before you can, give and do something like resistance training. So if you're sleep deprived or your energy levels are low, please don't do resistance training. Let your body heal. But once it's healed and you wake up with good energy and you have energy to burn, resistance training 3 to 4 times a week, the single most powerful lifestyle intervention for insulin sensitivity. It also reduces DHEA that elevates due to stress and testosterone in women with adrenal androgen excess. Okay, and then the last thing, reducing insulin from 20.3 to below 6 would predictably reduce testosterone, reduce CRP, improve thyroid function, the T3 conversion back to free T3, and it would begin normalizing her menstrual cycle, all from this one intervention, which is priority number 3, address insulin resistance. But again, you have to fix the gut first. Number 2, you have to decrease inflammation. And number 3, then insulin resistance. Number 4 is rebuild her nutritional foundation. Okay, so she has nutrient depletion. Vitamin D is 15. Folate is 3.4, and she has low normal zinc, and she has an actively impaired immune system. Her mood is off, and her gut repair capacity is low. It also affects her hormone production. These must be corrected pretty aggressively. So vitamin D3, 5,000 IUs plus K2 daily with a fatty meal. We're targeting her levels to be around 80. This is immunomodulatory, so it affects her immune system. It's not just a supplement. Like I always say, vitamin D is like a hormone in the body. She needs a methylated B complex, 1 to 2 daily. And this one has 5 MTHF, so MTHF, because active folate and methylcobalamin B12 support methylation. It supports mood and also detoxification and hormone processing. So she needs it for multiple reasons. Zinc, 25 to 30 grams daily. If it's used beyond 12 weeks, we want to always switch them to zinc balance because it contains copper to prevent depletion. And then why does methylated forms matter? Standard folic acid requires conversion that up to 40% of the population can't perform internally or efficiently due to MTHFR variants. So methylated forms bypass this step entirely. Now, if you give a patient a methylated B and they get worse, then you know they do not need methylation. Okay, priority number 5, lower her stress load on the HPA axis. And I know, and you know, this isn't always easy. Like, we can't just live in a bubble. So I want her adrenal glands, though, to calm down. They've been in overdrive. The DHEA and the testosterone elevation, they won't go down. They won't normalize until stress physiology that's driving them gets better. So it's not just about her mindset. It's actual biology. So she has to actually do things to make it better. So sleep. It's an absolute non-negotiable, minimum 7 to 8 hours. Below 6 hours maintains every pattern that we've been trying to fix. When sleep is impaired, then we can't repair the gut. Then hormone production doesn't go well, and immune calibration can't happen. So it's so important that she has to sleep. Caffeine reduction. Especially, it's really important here because caffeine directly stimulates DHEA production and worsens anxiety and palpitations in women who have elevated androgens. So they don't know why they feel bad, but they think their caffeine is keeping them awake, but it's actually contributing to their anxiety and their palpitations. Cortisol manager or other supplements can be very helpful. Phosphatidylserine 2 to 400 milligrams and ashwagandha 3 to 600 milligrams have both been shown to reduce cortisol, lower DHEA output, and reduce anxiety. Okay, remember, I'm not giving you medical advice. This is one person, one situation based on her labs, her gut testing, her biology. So please don't take this information and apply it to yourself. You can learn from this information, but again, you should be evaluated by your provider. Morning light exposure, 10 minutes outdoors with 30 minutes of walking, resist the cortisol, spikes. So what it does, it kind of resets the cortisol circadian rhythm, reducing chronic cortisol elevation, and that's going to help her adrenal excess go down. And I've tried to do it. Like sometimes it would just might be having coffee, looking outside the window. It might be getting out and going for a walk first thing in the morning, but it's so important to get 10 minutes of outdoors or sunlight within the first 30 minutes of awakening. Okay, priority number 6, let the hormones follow. So in this case, I wouldn't treat the hormones first. It's the last thing that I would do and watch them get better. This is the hardest thing, I think, to explain to patients, and this is the most important sequencing principle of functional medicine. So Jenna's high testosterone, her heavy cycles, and her hormonal symptoms are not primarily hormone problems. They're actually secondary to gut dysfunction, her insulin resistance, and her adrenal stress. So treating the hormones before fixing the root cause, it's kind of like mopping up a flooded floor and you still have the water running. That's the best way I can describe it. So fix the gut, normalize the insulin, calm the adrenals, the hormones, I promise you, will follow, and they'll get better on their own. And when they don't follow, after 3 or 4 months of upstream work, then and only then do I consider targeted hormonal support. Okay, so remember, key point, mopping the floor while the tap water is still running onto the floor. That's what it means to treat hormones without fixing the gut. You're never going to be able to mop it up. You're never going to be able to fix it because you're not fixing the root cause. So turn off the tap first, fix the problem at the upstream, and then the rest of the things will follow, and you'll get better. Okay, your action plan, what to do this week. If these things apply to you, whether you're 25, honestly, or 55, or 42, whatever age, whether you have all of her symptoms or just some of them, these are the steps that address the foundational pattern we covered today. Your gut, your inflammation, your metabolic health, in that order. So 1, count your bowel movements this week. And I mean, seriously, count them. So funny, I was joking with my husband. I said, I never thought that there would become an age where we would be talking about whether or not we had a bowel movement. It's a good or bad day. And if we send poop emojis to each other. So count your bowel movements this week. Seriously, write it down. If you're not having at least one complete, comfortable bowel movement every single day, that means your gut is not clearing waste, hormones, or toxins efficiently. Start with magnesium citrate, like I mentioned, 400 milligrams at night, and increase fiber to 25 to 35 grams daily from vegetables, seeds, and whatever other fiber sources that align with your diet. So it could be chia seeds, it could be flaxseed, it could be chickpeas, avocado. There's raspberries, blackberries, all good sources of fiber. This is your baseline before anything else. Number 2, ask for a CRP, high sensitivity CRP test at your next blood draw. Say, I'd like a high sensitivity CRP added to my panel, doc. It's an inexpensive, and usually it's covered by insurance. Remember, a CRP above 1 in a woman who feels well is a signal. Above 3 is a call to action. The single number can explain anxiety, fatigue, weight resistance, hormone chaos, and recurring infections when nothing else can. So inflammation is happening in that body when the CRP is above 1 and above 3, it's a wake-up call. Step 3, if you have high ferritin, ask about your total iron binding capacity, TIBC, before taking any iron supplement. This is critical. High ferritin plus low TIBC equals inflammatory iron sequestration, not iron deficiency. Taking iron in this state can worsen your gut, worsen your inflammation, and worsen every symptom driving the ferritin up. Ask your doctor to interpret the full panel, not just the ferritin in isolation. So I always get an iron panel, I get a saturation of iron and total iron binding capacity and the ferritin. Step 4, add omega-3s and curcumin if your CRP is elevated. Omegas, 2 to 4 grams EPA DHA daily, and curcumin at 500 milligrams twice daily are 2 of the most evidence-backed anti-inflammatory interventions available without a prescription. They address the fire, not the smoke. For women over 40 with perimenopausal symptoms, reducing systemic inflammation is one of the most direct routes to improved hormonal function. Step number 5, add fasting insulin to your annual labs. A fasting glucose can look completely normal while insulin is already elevated at 15, 18, even 20. So it's signaling that your pancreas is working overtime to maintain glucose control. This is a 5 to 10 year window of opportunity before glucose starts rising. So if you're young and you have insulin of 20.3, or if you're older and you're in your 40s or 50s, it doesn't matter. You have to act upon it, and it's the same action for both. So ask for fasting insulin, know what yours is. Step number 6, optimize vitamin D aggressively. Not to 30, not to 40, but to 80. Below 30 is deficient. Below 20, like when hers was 15, is a significant immune and metabolic emergency. Vitamin D receptors are on every immune cell, every gut epithelial cell, and every endocrine gland in the body. A level 15 is not a footnote, it's a driver. So take 5,000 IUs daily with a fatty meal and retest in 90 days. Step number 7, consider requesting a GI map if you have chronic digestive symptoms, recurrent infections, unexplained anxiety, or hormonal chaos that hasn't responded to conventional treatments. It's a comprehensive stool test. It reveals dysbiosis, which is your gut microbiome, pathogens, intestinal permeability, and inflammatory markers, specifically for the gut. It's the difference between guessing and knowing, is what I always say. And for a woman whose gut is the root of her symptoms, guessing is not good enough, for sure. Okay, your symptoms are not separate. They all share a root. Find the root, and the branches begin to heal on their own. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, I want to leave you with 2 things I took away from this story or her case. So the first, high ferritin does not always mean iron overload. Sometimes and often it means the body has locked its iron in a vault because something is on fire. Before any woman takes iron based on a lab value, she needs to know what her high sensitivity CRP is and her total iron binding capacity alongside it. Okay, those 3 numbers together tell a story about ferritin that you won't know alone when you look at that number, just ferritin by itself. Number 2, and this is the one I want you to carry with you. When you see constipation in yourself, elevated CRP, hormonal imbalance, and metabolic dysfunction appearing together in the same body, the gut is not one of several problems. The gut is the problem. Everything else is downstream. And I spend a lot of time teaching this to my colleagues because it's so important. Everything starts in the gut. We live in a medical system that's brilliant, and it's good at naming downstream symptoms, but naming a symptom is not the same as finding the source, is how I say it. So she doesn't, in this case, Jenna, she doesn't have 5 separate diagnoses. She has one river, inflammatory gut dysfunction, feeding 5 streams. Treat the river, and the streams begin to clear. Okay? So I hope you get that, because I do hope it helps you look at your symptoms differently. If this episode makes you look at your constipation a little bit differently, or your anxiety differently, or even your labs differently, then it has done exactly what it was supposed to do. Make you curious and make you question. Share this with a woman who has been told her symptoms don't connect. They do. And most often they always do. And she deserves to know how. So maybe this episode will help her. You can find us at our website, Wisconsin Institute of Functional Medicine. We're here to help you dig into your own labs, connect the systems, and help you feel better. Or seek a functional medicine doctor near you. But you definitely deserve to have your levels checked and for you to find your root cause. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today on Midlife Clarity with Dr. Tracy Page. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes where we continue to break down the science, the myths, and the mindset shifts around hormones, perimenopause, menopause, metabolism, and the strength for women over 40, so you can feel like yourself again, maybe even better than before. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Midlife health becomes easier when we stop whispering about hormone changes and start having informed, honest conversations. Before we go, a quick reminder. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. It does not replace a consultation with your own physician or qualified healthcare provider. Always seek professional medical guidance regarding your personal health concerns. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, clarity changes everything.